don't have six speakers. We talk a bit about security, what is important to regain our independence, energy-wise, digitally-wise. You'll focus a bit, you can say whatever you want. But you'll focus also on digital. And maybe reflect a little bit on your speech that you gave this defending Maloney. Because it's not about Maloney, it's about no one should be interfering in our independence. Maybe they will ask questions. Maybe people ask questions in another language. Hello? Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. If everybody would like to take a seat so we can start with this panel. My dear friends, if we could please take a seat or continue the conversation outside the room so we can have a go for this panel. I have to be very modest to people because usually I am one of the people talking, continuing the conversation. So yes, thank you all. Thank you for coming to this, I think, really, really interesting panel with two brilliant speakers. We have with us Teresa Ribera, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, with a very broad portfolio, competition, among many others. And we have Eli Schlein, the leader of the Partito Democratico of Italy. I am Mohammed Shahim. I'm from the S&D group in the European Parliament. I work on energy industry mostly, and I'm also expecting an applause, but it's a joke. It's a joke. So. I have to say today we're going to talk about the freedom deal. And a freedom deal, what it is, what it could entail. And for me, the slogan up there, forward together now, reminds me of the Marshall Plan. And maybe some of you will say, how is he connecting it? Marshall made posters to campaign in every state in the US to make sure that people started supporting the rebuilding of the EU. Catastrophe was behind us, and one of the posters that I really did never forget was one with a windmill. And it said, the windmill, every blade had a flag of a European country, and the slogan below it was, whatever the weather, we must move together. And even the logo of this event reminds me a bit of a windmill. So the idea is, how can we make sure that people feel the urgency to work together to make Europe free, independent, to make sure that Europe has its own decision power on its own future. And for that, I think we need to rethink our policies on energy, on defense, and on digital. And for that, we're going to have a conversation with these two very important European social democratic voices. So, Teresa, you will have the floor to elaborate a little bit on this concept of freedom deal, how you look at it, what it means when it comes to accelerating the green transition. And for this panel, we will take a bit of our time. At the end, I will have room for Q&As. There will be someone running in the room, but let's start, Teresa.
Well, thank you so much. So I would like to share a couple of ideas and to benefit from the possibility to exchange views on this. I have to say that not so far ago, Mohammed told me, in fact, when thinking about the energy transition, when thinking about why we need to promote a very different model, we should be connecting this transformation with our expectation, our wills to reach freedom, to prevent being weaponized or blackmailed on things that are so important for the people. Probably this is not a new idea, but we need to reframe and update this idea. In the 70s, we had this huge oil crash all over the world. Not so far ago, but 20, 25 years ago, there was an American essayist that wrote a very, very relevant book called The Price. And The Price was telling us the story about the search of oil and how oil was weaponizing the whole world, and how important it was to control the oil and coming from coal to oil. And now what we are witnessing is the change of the geopolitics and framing the discussion between petrostates, electrostates. So, to a certain extent, thinking about energy has always been connected to thinking about power. It is a great driver for the economy, for the industry, for the welfare of the people. And we in Europe identified something which was very important. It is a very relevant piece when thinking about security in the broad sense, including climate security or technology security. And it has taken quite a long while to identify that we need to come across the board to transform the energy system if we wanted to build this freedom, this capacity to decide on ourselves, to the risk, to reduce the risk to be blackmailed, or to have an extra price to pay because the whole economy, the whole welfare of our societies was built on something that we don't own. We don't have oil, we don't have so much gas, and it was the very basis of the modern economy once coal was identified as something that could not deliver so much. So yes, it is quite important. But then we enter into the very recent developments in these last years. Oh my God. We discovered to what extent this notion of weaponization of oil and gas was at the very core of the crisis with Russia already, 5 years ago? And we discovered to what extent we were so much used to develop our welfare state and industrial capacities based on oil and coal, even if we had been saying that we wanted to get rid of oil and coal because we wanted to fight against climate change, fight against pollution, and giving the people a chance to breathe cleaner air, and identifying the whole set of industrial opportunities to build a different economy, a different industrial model, a different mobility. And we also discovered that the Chinese had understood that they were also a huge country with great aspirations to develop welfare, but they did not count on oil nor on gas. So they started to bet on being an electrostate and picked this very relevant idea. Let's think about the next industrial revolution and to get a much more bigger share of the global economy and the global profits by boosting innovation and technology based on an economy not based on oil. And then we found ourselves in a situation where we said, why we are not getting rid of these dependencies when we have the capacities intellectually and technically speaking, the expectations coming from the people to develop a different energy model? Well, it is so much truth that in 44 days of the Iran war, we have paid 22 additional billion euros for the imports of gas and oil that we Europeans consume.
With not one single extra electron or atom.
That's it. So the question to me is not why we can make the case of this being a freedom revolution. Getting rid of dependencies, or at least lowering the dependencies, boosting the industrial opportunities and facilitating additional innovation opportunities for our economy, is that we need to do it quickly and in a fair way. And when I say a fair way, is that, of course, there is a very distributional impact that needs to be tackled on how much energy efficient, how much electrified the different societies may be, or the different people in the society. So I think that this makes sense from the perspective of an agenda of progressive people trying to figure out how to provide comfort, prosperity, and welfare. But it is also interesting in terms of how we get rid of this type of emotional pressure coming from some other political people that enjoy feeding into hate, anger, or fear. Because we have the capacities and the possibilities and the wealth to do it in a smart way. The only small detail is that this means a very appealing, interesting, and across-the-board huge change. So we need to be well-organized, generous, and anticipating where the risk may be. We have done a lot, and we are experiencing what it means not doing it sufficiently quick. My conviction is that we can do it.
Thank you. Maybe a short follow-up. Because at the end of the day, it's about narratives, and people perceive concepts like the Green Deal or climate policy as cost-driving factors. When you talk with people about it, you usually they tend to look at you and think about, whenever I talk about climate or about Green Deal, that they actually look away, or they think like, my God, our life is already expensive, don't bother us, let's do it again when we have better economic prosperity. How do we change the narrative? How do we make sure that these type of concepts move from, let's say, the perception of restriction to the perception of opportunity and security? Because how can we move people? Politicians can be right, but it doesn't say anything when people do not follow you. What could you say?
I think that we need to be very concrete and to create the right context to facilitate the change. This is why fairness is important, driving this freedom attempt, this freedom expectation that could connect what we do with good things, with positive values. But look at the different situation of our two European countries. I don't get into the Netherlands for the time being, but I stay in Italy and Spain. We were not so far apart less than 5 years ago.
Exactly.
And if you look into the daily price of electricity in average of Spain of today, and the daily average price for electricity in Italy today, you see what it means. Betting on smart, quick transformation of the electricity system, and what it means delaying this transformation. And this is a systemic change, so it is not just changing a plant based on coal by a plant based on photovoltaics and sun. It means thinking the grid differently. It means securing things that did not needed to be secure before. It means different skills and capacities in terms of labor. It means different expectations and possibilities in terms of industrial devices and so on and so on. It means a smarter manner to handle things, but it pays back. Of course, we cannot compete on something. I mean, we cannot compete based on a price that we do not control. And as I got, and I love that, coming from the social nets. At the end, those that were opposing the renewable energy solutions, saying that they were intermittent, are finding out that intermittency is much more higher if you rely on oil and gas. What about intermittency on oil and gas after the crisis in the invasion of Ukraine and Russia blackmailing the rest of Europe? And what about intermittency right now, where again this old-fashioned manner to understand power and controlling of oil is driving some of the most important operations in the Middle East, destroying capacity to produce oil and gas, impacting on the eventual availability of chemicals or jet fuel. So with lots of things that are along the chain of an economy, a global economy that is mainly still based on oil and gas, and that needs to demake this dependency if we want to build resilience, and probably if we want to think in terms of freedom and peace, that are still quite very noble aims when thinking on how we can provide prosperity to the people. So yes, I think that it is important, and yes, I think that we can manage to get it done.
Thank you. I mean, it's very interesting to see how volatile our prices are and how they can be easily manipulated by one message online on a social media platform. And you know, whatever you like it or not, if you want to increase independence in Europe, that means sustainable energy. That means following what you've done as a minister in the Iberian Peninsula. Invest significantly in sustainable energy to make sure that we really become less dependent on prices that can be manipulated again by crises, but also by, simply by tweets. What you see is that dependencies, this freedom deal, looks at energy, we look at digital, because also you could say that in many, many ways Europe is digitally colonized. I don't know whether I can use these words, but it is true. With a push of a button, our data can be closed, our services can be stopped, and almost every organization, government or non-government, depends on this. This needs to change, and slowly we see change in Europe. You see governments phasing out software, investing in European startups and scale-ups. Ellie, how do you look at Freedom Deal from an energy perspective, from a digital perspective, from a security perspective?
First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm happy to be with you, and let me start by saying how beautiful it is to be all together from different countries here. I see some colleagues which I shared the experience in the European Parliament from UK, from Poland. I see Mark, I see friends from Spain, Portugal, Italy. I think it's crucial to be here to share the same agenda, because we share already the same values, and one of these values is exactly democracy. And when we talk about a freedom deal, we're talking about democracy. Why it is so important, and I thank Teresa for rubbing salt in our wounds about the situation and the difference between our two countries. It's true what she said. A couple of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, the situation of Italy and Spain was about the same. But then something happened. By the way, Teresa happened, Pedro happened. What did they do? Just to give you an example, last week, as a consequence of this new illegal war that has to stop, in our country, in Italy, the cost of energy was about 180 euro per megawatt hour. In Spain, in the same day, it was 18. It means 10 times more. You can understand what it means for our citizens, for their bills to pay, and you can understand what it means for our businesses, because this means losing competitiveness. So, what happened in Spain is that they believed that investing in the new technologies, already mature technologies of renewables, would impact the cost of energy and in the end be beneficial for the economy, for workers, for families, for businesses, okay? And they facilitated the investments. In our country, we have a government that has declared war to renewables. And it's crazy because it's a country that is rich in sun, in wind, in water. So we are pushing also in our country in this direction because it's a direction that would, in a way, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improving the air that we breathe every day. And at the same time, it is a way for people to spare money. When you ask us, Mohamed, how to change the narrative, because it's true, the right wing has created a narrative by saying, hey, who is going to pay all this green transition? Well, that's the point. The point is that the green transition has to be a just transition, has to have a red heart. We cannot ask to the same ones who paid the economic and financial crisis of these years to pay. But let's start by making pay the people and businesses who pollute. Let's start by inverting that principles and say, we can find together a way to make the transition convenient. I think this is the best way to change the narrative. And I have to mention here one of the founders of environmentalism, at least in Europe, Alex Langer. He said clearly this. He said, that the ecological conversion will happen when it will appear desirable. But it's up to us, as progressive, to shape the policies that make the transition convenient. Because the transition is convenient. And businesses know very well, because even in countries like mine, where there is a lack of this kind of vision by this government, where there is a lack of industrial policies to guide these double transition, ecological and digital transition, they are investing already. And you know what? From the data, you can see that businesses that have invested in sustainability have increased their added value by 16%. At the same time, you can see that waste management, wastes are a cost for society, but are a cost also for businesses. If you invest in circular economy, if you manage to exchange what is a waste for you with other businesses, and if you manage to reduce your waste, then it's convenient also for you because you spare money. And you say the same with energetic communities, for example. There is a lot of interest from small and medium enterprises in that direction, and also for associations, for schools. If you can, in a way, share the production of clean energy and redistribute that energy, you will have a mutual beneficial. It's mutually beneficial. So what I mean is that we need to make this convenient for people and businesses. And the Green Deal was exactly about this. So the problem is not the Green Deal. I think it's the lack of courage of our European governments to invest more resources to accompany businesses and people in this double transition. And about digital, I think it's very strictly connected to the ecological transition. Why? Well, in order to decarbonize the economy, you have to have smart grids. You have to have a digital infrastructure. And you need your energy to, in a way, make that digital infrastructure work. But I'm particularly worried on digital because the Green Deal is working in the direction of freeing us from the dependence of fossil fuels, which is also a democratic issue and a geopolitical issue. We cannot possibly continue to be so dependent from fossil fuels of countries that are declaring wars and are not respecting international law and human rights, okay? So this is one point. The other one is digital. It's about security. Artificial intelligence. It is an opportunity, but it has to be guided and regulated in order to redistribute the added value. Otherwise, it will increase inequalities. Think about workplaces. The EU has done a lot of efforts to, in a way, have regulation on the rights of platform workers. It's crucial. The algorithms need to be transparent. They cannot decide to exploit human work, as we see with riders that, work in our countries, and in some countries have no rights, have no insurance. They risk their lives because they have to go out even when it's raining or it's snowing. And at the same time, they earn a couple of euros every time they give something to eat to a family. We cannot accept this kind of exploitation. So algorithms need to be transparent. And I want to think, when you called me, Mohammed, on the freedom deal, I thought about something that happens to some of us. I don't know if you ever had the chance to, unfortunately, to denounce hatred speech online or threats online. We cannot give the decision on what is a crime and what trials can go on to private digital platforms in foreign countries. It's not acceptable. And you know what it means? That they can decide, for example, if you denounce something, someone who has threatened you online, that they don't confirm the identity of that person, and so there is no trial anymore. And again, you heard in the United States there was an historical decision by a court that condemned Meta and Google on how they designed their platforms to make people, especially minors, dependent. And again, we need to regulate, but I think it's not sufficient to regulate. I think we should aim at something even more ambitious. And I will conclude with this. Look, see what's happening around us. We're all together here to discuss about the attempt by the extreme right nationalists to dismantle international law, international cooperation, okay? And to substitute international law with the law of the strongest and the richest. And we cannot accept this. So what we should realize is that Europe is a space of freedom, rights, and democracy. It means that the more they build walls, we need to build bridges with other countries in the world. But let's be honest. What is happening now is squeezing out Europe from the big picture. We cannot be marginalized by the aggressiveness of the new American administration of Trump or by the aggressiveness of Putin in Russia, or again, squeezed out by the competition with big actors like US and China. On artificial intelligence, they have invested hundreds of billions of euros. None of our countries can compete alone with that kind of investment. So I want to propose what is a proposal of a Nobel Prize winner, Giorgio Parisi, who said something very, very important, said we should build a research center at the European level that collects all the best competences and researches in Europe on artificial intelligence and digital. Only together, we can compete and build European digital platforms not to be dependent. Because you see what happened when some judges of international courts took decisions on Netanyahu's government, and as a consequence, they were stolen off, boycotted with, they could not send an email anymore with the digital platforms. So we need European, yes. Yeah.
Crazy.
I think we need, Teresa, on the European public and common goods to develop public European agencies that collect resources, investment, and competences to be able to build our strategic autonomy. I know it's difficult, but I think that in order to do this, we have to do, as progressive, two ambitions. One is to overcome unanimity and work at least with enhanced cooperation with the member states who are willing to start. And second, we cannot improve our competitiveness and build our strategic autonomy if we don't go on with the common investment at the European level like the Next Generation EU. We need to do this fight together to build our strategic autonomy and to build a European industrial plan that accompanies the transition, the ecological and digital transition for both people and businesses, and we need it also to build our common defense. So my appeal is, let's work together in this direction, because we need to build strategic autonomy for Europe, and we have to do it by continuing common investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali. I have to say we're currently working on the multi-annual financial framework of the European Union. We have a lot of debates on how to use those amounts. For me, if we would have the same sense of urgency in Europe and let's say reserve some of the money that we are willing to spend on defense, and I think it's important, we would reallocate those funds to digital, which is also security, and to energy. I think we can overcome every crisis, and we can make Europe way more independent in 4 or 5 years than we are now. It's really amazing for me to see that after every crisis, we have some urgencies, and then slowly we tend to forget until we're hit again. There will be gas price peaks every couple of years if we do not act. If you want to fight for affordability, if you want to make sure prices are predictable, then we need to go sustainable and stop fighting the windmills. I don't understand, Ali, how the far right hates windmills. They remind me sometimes of Don Quixote, who's fighting the windmills and creating a fake enemy. Let's stop that. Let's do it for the citizens, for the small and medium enterprises. I'm going to do something because I'm out of my questions, because they answered most of them in a very good manner, and I'm going to open the floor for 2 questions from the audience. I don't want speeches. I want specific questions to the 2 ladies. The first one in the front. Yes. If we have time, I'll do another question. I see you. Specify the question and the person, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia Penzer. I'm a very proud European, and even prouder today. So thank you for your leadership, first of all. My question is, can we do this? Can we have that vision without a paradigm shift? The paradigm shift from domination, exploitation, extraction, to collaboration, community, care. Can we do it? Because will the people really believe that new narrative if we're not going at the core? Thank you.
Good question. Teresa.
Well, yes, I think that this is what we need to achieve. I think that to a certain extent what we are experiencing is the learning process on how we need to rebalancing these dependencies towards a much more fair manner to understand how we can rely each other. So to block these vulnerabilities that go along these strong dependencies on energy goods or strong dependencies on digital services and provide weakness. And I would say that it is not only a thing dealing with European thinking. We in Europe have identified and have been experiencing what it means, this understanding of globalization that at the end comes with lots of concentration of power in certain domains that are key, and not reassuring healthy relationships between the different big economies. So rebalancing this power means freedom, because it means a much more broad ecosystem of players, but also much less power for each of them. So we can count on different alternatives, first thing. Second thing, we can count on solutions that are not developed against someone, but in a much more cooperative way. And this may be or may sound quite abstract, but it also explains to what extent there is this strong fight, as Eli was saying, against what we have been used to build peace and development in the last 70 years. Cooperation, mutual trust, and much more balanced access to development and wealth. And of course, it has not been perfect. We have been working for 40 years with this notion of liberalization of everything with no counterweights. And it is interesting the case on digital, because we were relying so much on external inputs, thinking from the European perspective in terms of energy goods. But at the very same time, we were also developing such a huge dependency in terms of digital services, building the whole set of economy and freedoms, that at the end, we found ourselves cornered with no tools. So if we want to provide, to ensure freedom and to provide opportunities to everybody, we need to be much more balanced, and to avoid situations where basic goods may be weaponized by those controlling the access to these basic goods. And this means building a different type of approach based on cooperation and, as I said, much more healthier, balanced counterparts and recognition of players and mutual respect. But my sense is that this is a very appealing agenda for the progressive family worldwide that is trying to build, and this is not new, but we need to reset our mindset to adapt and integrate the new challenges. But it has always been this feeling of internationalism, solidarity, peace building, wealth, fairness, that has been behind the idea of the progressives all over the world. So I think that it is quite a good opportunity to be forward-looking with a positive mindset and trying to update the way we have understood this balance and counterbalance, to think about welfare and fairness in an updated way.
Thank you. Maybe it's a condition for its success. Maybe we should look at it as a condition, not only as a paradigm shift, but in order to make it more democratic, to include more corporations, maybe it's a condition for its success. We go to the second question.
Hello, my name is Fernando García Crespo Santaló. I am a proud citizen of Mexico. I'm a proud member of the Liberal Party of Canada as a Canadian, and I'm a proud member of PSOE as a Spaniard. Somebody who has the US as a neighbor, it's pretty concerning what's happening to two of my three countries. My question is, as Europe declares its independence through a freedom deal from the US, what role do countries like my other two, specifically thinking of Canada and in Carney's speech, and in Davos, and in Mexico with Claudia Sheinbaum being here, what role does that relationship play, and is there any way that we could sort of be colleagues in that European sort of project as democracies and middle powers?
Thank you, Ellie. It's a good question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No, it's crucial. The role, as I said before, I think that the more they try to divide us, divide our countries, divide our communities, the more they build walls to stop people, but also to stop trade. You know what's meant for your other countries when Trump decided to put tariffs. And I think it's about the same of what happened in my country, with the effects of that decision of closure to directly impacting our businesses and workers. So I think that here in Barcelona, with this huge meeting of all the progressives from every part of the world, because I met yesterday many colleagues from South America, from Africa, from Asia, I think that we have to show from here that we share a common agenda and that another world is possible, which is not based on the law of the strongest and the richest. It's not based on arrogance, because people demand peace and protection. What I think is that now, I mean, we know that there is an international of nationalists. It's been there for some time. We can name one of them in many countries, okay? We should be better, stronger on this. Show that we are united across our borders and share the same values. I'm very interested in what was done in Mexico for the poorest people, for social policies. I know that there are results, stories to tell. In Italy, I've been mentioning so often the results of what Pedro Sanchez is doing here. Why? Because against the narrative of the right wing, here you have a government that decided to reduce inequalities by improving, doubling the minimum wage, by sitting down with enterprises, businesses, and trade unions to decide to combat precarious jobs. And by the way, they also have done good industrial policies. So they are attracting investments from foreign countries. It works. The social progressive agenda works. We need to unite our strengths and talk more about the results of what other countries are doing. But I think that we are facing a huge opportunity for one reason. The International of Nationalists has strengthened, I mean, these people have strengthened each other with the same message of hatred, walls, and choosing the same enemies every day, the same scapegoats. Who's different? Migrants, LGBTQI communities, emancipated women, trade unions, Europe. It's the same story we hear in every country, right? The truth is that they select every day an enemy to distract from the fact that they're not delivering for people, like what's happening in my country. But this is the first moment in which, after Trump, the tariffs and the wars, now it's them who are scaring off the people. Now we have an opportunity to offer peace, normality, protection, starting from social protection. And that's why I think it's so important that we relate more with the countries that you mentioned. The speech of the Prime Minister of Canada, I think we have all appreciated it. We all felt close to those words, especially when he said, if you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu. That is the risk for Europe, and that is why we're here together talking about a freedom deal that is our way to respond with another world to the world that Trump, Netanyahu, Meloni, Orban, luckily not anymore, and others are trying to build. Because this world is not improving the life of our citizen. And the more we are concrete in explaining this, the more we will gain consensus, beat the rights, and change the world. Thank you.
I think, thank you, Ali. I think a very important comment. The far right is really well connected. They are an international movement, something we have to beat them in, because internationalism is within the core of social democracy. And I think this gathering today should be something we should continue. We should beat them internationally by sharing ideas, by by protecting, human rights and the dignity of the people. I'm checking if I still have time for a question. We can do one final question. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to take both questions, and then I'm going to give the speakers to
Thank you very
conclude.
much.
Thank you.
Let's dream that social democrats is the majority in the world and in Europe. And let's have a meeting of social democrat energy ministers. And they ask Teresa, what are the main 5 steps that we have to take into account in order to have a different policy in energy? I think it could be a very good takeaway, because Teresa has been a minister and now is a commissioner. She's very successful, she knows everything. So maybe you could give us these 5 first steps. Thank you.
And before we're going to answer, I'm going to take the final question in the front. In the front, first row. Someone I don't know, a random person. Our dear friend and colleague, please.
Happy birthday, Mohammed.
It's
his birthday. He deserves an applause. Thomas Vaya, the member of the European Parliament
That was
from
the
Malta.
condition for the question.
It was that. You knew it. I think we have a problem in becoming free because of a single metric, a global metric, that is there not to help people. It's there to help corporations. It's there to help profits. It's there to help the wealthy. And I'm talking about the GDP. It is the sole measure in a way that we see what progress is. But it's not the same progress that we in this room believe is actual progress. And my question is, do you believe that we need to look, us as socialists, us as progressives, beyond GDP as to see what is a measure of progress, and not only use GDP for our decisions, not as the sole way of dispersing funds in the MFF, in deciding laws in the European Commission, but looking beyond other metrics and putting them as, at least in the Union, a way as to see how we are progressing, not only as profits, but also in each and everyone's well-being, environment, etc., etc. Because this should be our #1 goal as socialists and progressives.
Thank you, Tomas. So, Teresa, then Ellie, please, the 2 questions, and maybe also a final message to conclude.
Yes, thank you. I will. I think that every single country, every single geography counts on the possibilities to transform the energy system. I'm thinking on electricity as the main driver, so electrifying to the extent possible the consumption of energy. And it takes time. And we need to pay attention what are the chances, natural chances, so to reduce the dependencies from abroad, the skills, the capacities, and the challenges, because I think that we need to pay attention to the people. It's not something that we can do from one day to the next one. It takes time. The social dimension and the fairness in the transformation is absolutely key. And then we need to count on the understanding of the people on why we do these type of things. And yes, we have managed to do quite a lot in Spain in a very short period of time. It is not fulfilled, and there are things that will still take time. We are still an oil-based economy, globally speaking. So I think that we still need to do lots of things. But to me, the 3 things is the technical feasibility being combined with the financial soundness to be affordable, and the social concerns, being fair in the transformation, ensuring that since the very first moment, people understand and get the benefit of the change. And yes, I think that we need to think beyond GDP, that is for sure, and we need to think beyond our local boundaries to be sure that, or to remind ourselves that many more people belonging to the humankind have very similar aspirations in terms of prosperity and good quality of life for their families, their relatives, and their neighbors, no matter where they live. So we need to enhance the possibility to for this to happen. And this means cooperation and not conflict, and being quite firm against the abuses of power that still exist. So I think that's a great agenda to energize, speaking about energy and freedom, to energize the progressive agenda of our families in the world.
And Ali, could you maybe elaborate a bit, or maybe some final words
Sure.
for the crowd?
With pleasure. Thomas is right, and it reminded me of the famous quote of Kennedy when he said that the GDP measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. It's true, and we see some new ideas on that ground. For example, in our country, we have, as a party, fought a lot to ask to all the provinces in the country to change this kind of measurement, to include indicators of well-being. When I was vice president of a region, Emilia-Romagna, we drafted a strategy to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of the UN, 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we asked the effort to all the parts of the regional governments to develop indicators to monitor the progress. We have to be very clear that to measure the impact of our policies, it's not sufficient to have GDP, to have growth. We need to see the impact on occupation, good occupation. We need to see the impact on gender, because it is time to reduce gender inequalities throughout all the policies that we make, either it is an industrial policy or a health policy, and at the same time, the impact on the new generations. I just read yesterday that the city of Parma and the mayor of Parma, a good friend, Matteo Guerra, have introduced the youth track. I mean, they want to see every decision of the municipality, of the city, what kind of impact will have on the new generation. So I think you're right. We need to push this kind of impact assessment of the decision and policies that we put in place. And I think that it's crucial in order to build our alternative to the world that the right wing is trying to, to put under flame, in a way, with all these wars. We need to put at the center a message that is very, very simple. Peace and cooperation are the basis to improve every person's life, every citizen's life. And they can feel it. In our country, we had a constitutional referendum 3 weeks ago. There was an incredible turnout, and 15 million people came to say no to a reform of the Constitution by the government, to defend the Constitution, to defend democracy and freedom, but in a way also to say no to a government that in these 4 years has done nothing to improve their lives. They had the numbers in the parliament to do so, but they didn't do anything to improve people's lives. So what can they say every day? What can they see? They see that we have low wages, especially for young people. They see that we have a decrease of industrial production for 3 years now, and that we have the highest energy bills across the whole European Union. So, yes, we have discussed our proposal and our approach, but let's not be defensive on the mistakes and failures of the right wing when it's in government, because we will beat them. They're not unbeatable. We already beat them in the regional election and the referendum, in the constitutional referendum. But let's be clear. We will not beat them by running after them and after their agenda. We will beat them by building our agenda and forcing them on the ground where they feel most uncomfortable, which is social justice, climate justice, democracy and peace. And I think that if we put this at the center of our commitment every day, we will convince many people that up to now have not even voted anymore. So please, let's do this together, Thomas, also in Malta.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, this panel comes to an end. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the panel as much as I did. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Teresa. And let's close by quoting Pedro Sanchez. Adelante.